Welcome to our service, and I now invite you to settle into your seats here and at home for our beautiful prelude. Welcome to our Sunday service for February 6th, 2022, with our title today of Looking More Deeply as we celebrate the life and teachings of the Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who died recently in Vietnam on January 22nd at the age of 95. And as a beloved teacher for many decades, there's such a wealth of material that I could draw on, but I only have a few minutes with you today. So I'm hoping that what I offer will be meaningful both to those of you who may be just being introduced to the work of Thich Nhat Hanh, and of course among us we have many longtime students of his work. So welcome. And our opening words are by Thich Nhat Hanh, a meditation that I often use both at Easter time and during our All Souls commemoration that happens usually at the end of October, beginning of November, and from which the title for today's service comes. When we look into the heart of a flower, we can see clouds, sunshine, time, earth, and everything in the cosmos. Just like a flower, we are each a unique part of this amazing web of life. We are all part of the perpetual cycle of life, from birth to death to rebirth. If you look deeply into the palm of your hand, you will see your parents and all the generations of your ancestors, all of them alive in this very moment, each present in your body. You are a continuation of all of these people. May knowing this everlasting truth bring peace and kindness to our hearts and to the hearts of everyone we meet.
Welcome, everyone. On behalf of the entire congregation, I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Shenandoah Valley. I am Gina O'Connor, your worship associate for today's service. We come together each Sunday morning as a community of seekers of what is most important in our lives, seekers of understanding in the face of uncertainty and loss, seekers of forgiveness for our shortcomings, seekers of gratitude for the unexpected gifts we receive from all around us. We gather in awe of the beauty of nature and the mysteries of the universe. But most importantly, we come together as seekers of a community of love and empowerment, celebrating our search for truth and meaning in our daily lives. Now, as Julie comes forward, let us all say together, here and from our homes, the words for lighting our chalice. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, We gather to seek, to sustain, to share. And I invite you to join us as we say our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help our neighbor. To these ends, we covenant one with another.
Silence, recognizing these unusual and challenging times in which we live, and which, even though the Omicron numbers are coming down, which we're hopeful about, we're all feeling a lot of COVID exhaustion, pandemic fatigue. Yeah, it's still affecting each of us in really almost every aspect of our lives. So let's pause for a time of silence, and that will be followed by a brief meditation reading that goes with the theme of today's service, but also our covenant group theme for this month, which is soul. I invite you now to join with me in a period of silence. As I mentioned before, our meditation reading is a part of our covenant group theme for this month, which is soul. And here are a couple of paragraphs from the chapter on soul from our manual that we're using for covenant groups called Listening Hearts. And so this passage was written by the authors of that, the Unitarian Universalist minister, Christine Robinson, and her associate, Alicia Hawkins. Soul is cultivated by appreciating beauty in all of its forms, by remembering and cherishing all that moves us, by noting our yearnings, wounds, and healings, by sympathizing with other human beings and their yearnings, wounds, and healings. Soul is cultivated by working with others for common goals and enjoying the community that results. Soul grows, in other words, when we are stretched by our lives. And while soulfulness is something that we can desire, appreciate, and tend, it develops in its own way and time. We can play our part by living in ways that stretch and deepen our lives. We grow our souls when we ask ourselves to consider the wider consequences of our decisions and ways of life. One lovely expression of a soulful way of life is the idea which comes from the Iroquois people, that we should consider how a proposal will affect not just people alive today, but those who will be affected in the future up to the 7th generation. Only the wise can manage to care about what will happen 150 years from now. And now we will listen to Spirit of Life, our beloved weekly anthem almost, for those of you both here in the sanctuary and at your homes.
When we look into the heart of a flower, we can see clouds, sunshine, time, earth, and everything in the cosmos. Just like the flower, we are each a unique part of this amazing web of life. We are all part of the perpetual cycle of life, from birth to death to rebirth. If you look deeply into the palm of your hand, you will see your parents and all of the generations of your ancestors. All of them are alive in this moment. Each is present in your body. You are a continuation of each of these people. May knowing this everlasting truth bring peace and kindness to our hearts and to the hearts of everyone we meet.
I'm delighted to share with you today the life and teachings of one of the most beloved spiritual leaders of our time, of our lifetime, the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk, poet, scholar, and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh was born in 1926, and at the age of 16, he entered a Zen monastery in the country of his birth, Vietnam. In 1949, at the age of 23, he was ordained a monk. And during the early 1960s, Thich Nhat Hanh founded the School of Youth for Social Services as a way of involving students to work with villagers while responding to the devastation of war they were all experiencing firsthand. The students and villagers worked together to repair buildings, to set up schools, and provide basic health care. It was at this time that Thich Nhat Hanh coined the term engaged Buddhism, which has since then been applied to similar service-oriented initiatives that have emerged from branches of Buddhism beyond Zen. Also, starting Luther King Jr. in 1966, he urged King to oppose the war in Vietnam, which King did, and which brought King additional controversy on top of his strident civil rights advocacy. Dr. King himself nominated Thich Nhat Hanh for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1967. Thich Nhat Hanh led the Buddhist delegation to the Paris peace talks in 1969, but by 1973, when the war formally ended, Thich Nhat Hanh was banned from returning to his home country for refusing to take sides in the major conflict. In 2005, Thich Nhat Hanh was finally able to return to Vietnam for the first time, and even then, it was not without controversy. Thomas Merton was another of Thich Nhat Hanh's nonviolent peacemaking colleagues. Well into his 80s, and prior to his debilitating stroke in 2014, which left him unable to speak for his remaining years, Thich Nhat Hanh continued to teach, travel, and lead meditation retreats and trainings around the world and in the United States. These events included much varied audiences, such as members of Congress, Harvard Medical School, Hollywood stars and producers, and members of law enforcement, as in police officers and criminal justice workers. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote over 130 books, and 100 of them have been translated into English. One of his books, which is considered only one of his classics, is The Miracle of Mindfulness. It was originally written as a meditation manual for the monks and nuns who were facing death every day in war-torn Vietnam. Thich Nhat Hanh is known for his simple and direct lyrical style of teaching, which addresses our contemporary experiences of conflict and bewilderment with a tangible practice to ground and strengthen us. His unique approach was refined through his own life experience during the time of chaos and bloodshed in Vietnam, where he worked diligently to bring reconciliation between warring factions. Thich Nhat Hanh's counterintuitive approach to meditation and peacemaking proposed that even the most violent and painful experiences of our lives are worthy of our full attention, of awareness, and compassion. He teaches that only by understanding the suffering within ourselves and our own lives may we learn truly about the suffering of others. Through mindful meditation practices, which are a way of looking more deeply into our lives and the lives of those around us, instead of running away from suffering, we can bring insight and awareness, comfort and relief. As we are able to practice being fully present in the moment to the full spectrum of life experiences, we can help transform suffering into first a state of understanding, but then eventually to a state of peacefulness and acceptance. The classic image from Buddhism for this process is the lotus flower of compassion that grows out of the deep mud of chaos, pain, and sorrow. The Buddhist teachings encourage us to embrace sorrow as part of our lives and the lives of everyone, allowing the meditation practice, engaged Buddhism is non-dogmatic. It's not based on a set of beliefs about life, about life, ourselves, or society, or justice. Rather, it's a non-dualistic way of experiencing the fullness of life, from extreme suffering to sublime joy. The practice cultivates an awareness of the deep interdependence of all of life, with which Thich Nhat Hanh often referred to with the beautiful term interbeing. This practice allows us to embrace the coexistence of contradictions and complexity in our life experiences, the contradictions and complexity of suffering and of beauty. According to Thich Nhat Hanh, meditation practice is far from an evasion of reality and much more like a serene encounter with reality, all that is as it is, based in a vigilant attitude of awareness and awakening. He writes, meditation is to be aware of what is going on in our bodies, in our feelings, in our minds, and in the world. He talks about how if we stop to think about it, we are aware of terrible destruction and cruelty in our world happening each and every day. That capacity that we have as human beings to, if we allow it, destroy our planet many times over. And yet, the sunrise is still beautiful to behold. The delicate flower that blooms through the cracks of the earth or through the walls that we have built is a true miracle, expressing the tenacity and an exuberance of life. He says, yes, life is dreadful and it is wonderful. When we practice meditation, the art of looking more deeply, which is also called mindfulness, we can be in touch with both of these aspects simultaneously. This is the non-dualistic way. The radical empathy that comes from mindful meditation is what distinguishes engaged Buddhism from other forms of peacemaking practices. In another quote by Thich Nhat Hanh, he says, "Our enemy is not the other person. Our enemy is the violence, ignorance, and injustice in us and in the other person. When we are armed with compassion," he continues, "and understanding, we fight not against other people, but against the tendency we all have to invade, to dominate, to exploit." He goes on to say, we have to see hardships brought by others into our lives as a sort of natural disaster. These people making our lives so difficult because they are ignorant or prisoners of their desires or their hatreds. But if we speak angrily to them and treat them as our enemy, then we are just doing what they are doing, and we are no different from them. With radical empathy, the radical empathy of engaged Buddhist meditation practice, Thich Nhat Hanh describes that a profound healing can take place. It can take place within ourselves and within society. He's actually facilitated this to happen in his trainings, for example, with war veterans and with law enforcement officers and justice. Went through that mindfulness training and talked about how the training actually shifted how she approached volatile situations that she encountered in her line of duty. As an example, she shared about a call on a domestic disturbance that she went on where a man was holding his young daughter hostage because of a disagreement with his wife. Instead of forcefully removing him, she talked with him long enough to persuade him to return the daughter to her mother, and then stayed with him a few minutes longer to accompany him when he was able to share his deep pain in his life, even with the form of tears. She talked about what an important lesson it was for her to understand that violence and the threat of violence in our lives is so often caused by misplaced anger rooted in personal pain. She related that a few days after this incident, she happened to meet up with this husband again at a corner store in the same neighborhood. The 6'3" guy came over and hugged the 5'3" police captain, telling her that he had saved his life. Police Captain Sherry Maples went on to become the Attorney General for the state of Wisconsin. Thich Nhat Hanh's peacemaking message is that violence cannot end violence in our world. Only compassion and understanding can correct the wrong perceptions that we all have, which is at the root of hatred and our wars. Compassion and understanding can remove the barriers that we perceive between our inherent radical interdependence with each other and with all of life, what he calls interbeing. We certainly have to work and practice to keep our hearts open in the midst of all the pain and suffering that we witness in this world from day to day. But Thich Nhat Hanh has offered us both a vision and a tangible practice that can help us to heal and transform sorrow into a real and enduring peace. May it be so.
As Reverend Julie extinguishes the flame, let us say together, here and from our homes, the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of our community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. The purpose of this church is to encourage all who gather to grow more generous in spirit and in action. If you happen to be watching us online, we hope you will consider making an offering after today's service through our webpage, uushenandoah.org. This will allow us to exercise that generosity of spirit for this self-supporting church and its many ministries, which continue during this time when not all of us are able to be together physically. Thank you for joining us today.
And before our closing words again by Thich Nhat Hanh, I do have a couple of announcements for us all today. One is that if you haven't had a chance to watch the service from January 30th with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee's current president, I highly recommend that service to you, and to continue to welcome you to consider contributing to the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, and especially at this time of the year, its Guest at Your Table campaign, which is a way of individual memberships supporting an independent arm of our Unitarian Universalist faith. And I just wanted to share real quickly with you a couple of things that weren't a part of the service last Sunday, which are the agenda items that UUSC has for this coming year. One is rebuilding our immigration system. The second, supporting families in climate crisis. And the fourth, helping Indigenous communities fight for environmental justice. And as a matter of fact, they provided a quote that I thought was really wonderful about that last point, that while world leaders were debating over solutions to the climate crisis, Indigenous leaders around the world have been taking action. And a recent study showed that Indigenous-led resistance to 21 fossil fuel projects in the US and Canada over the past decade has actually stopped or delayed an amount of greenhouse gas pollution equivalent to at least 1/4 of the annual US and Canadian emissions. So we are at a time when we really do need to look to the Indigenous communities and their leadership to help us get back into balance with the earth. So I highly recommend supporting the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Another quick announcement is that usually we have our annual Heart to Heart Cafe on Valentine's Day weekend, which would be next weekend. But of course, we weren't able to do that the way that we'd like. So we've postponed it to St. Patrick's Day weekend, and it will be on March 19th instead. Hopefully we'll be able to do a combination of in-person Heart to Heart Cafe and invite those who are living far away to join us by contributing and being able to experience it virtually like you all are doing at home today. And I just also want to say the numbers have gone down, at least temporarily, here in our area through all of this prolonged changes in how we do everything. And it will be good to be together in person again, and especially as the weather changes and we can have more things outside in addition to inside the church. Now, our closing words, again, some of my favorites by Thich Nhat Hanh. Our true home is in the present moment. To live in the present moment is a miracle. The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth in the present moment. To appreciate the peace and beauty that are available now. Peace is all around us. in the world and in nature and within us, in our bodies and our spirits. Once we learn to touch this peace, we will be healed and transformed. It is not a matter of faith. It is a matter of practice. May it be so. Thanks for joining us from your homes and here in our church sanctuary. We'll see you again soon.